what's up? Sanisa, Super Bad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Arum is relishing the prospect of Estrada versus Valle after moving with the times.
This Friday, as the co-main event to the main event, Senicia Estrada will be taking on Yokasta Valle for the undisputed crown in the women's minimum weight division.
Top Rank made that happen.
Some of the women are fantastic talents and very entertaining. It isn't that what we want from our fighters?
Estrada and Valle have engaged in furious verbal exchanges similar to the activity expected from their gloves on Friday night. What we know from the history of Title 1X is that if you build it, they will come, said Nancy Hogshead McCarr, a three-time Olympic gold medalist swimmer and chief executive for Champion Women, which advocates for equality and access in sports. If people can get their sexism out of the way, you see what's happening in boxing.
Women's boxing has grown exponentially in the last 6 or 7 years.
The profile of the sport, the profile of some of the fighters, some of the athletes, but here on the North American continent, it seems to me that there's more work needs doing. If people can get their sexism out of the way, you see what's happening in boxing. Their success has allowed women to get out of the male gaze when they're being hailed for their athletic prowess. And many of them are.
But it's not idealism for the sake of idealism, virtue signaling.
You know, what drew me to a lot of these women fighters that I often talk about here on the channel and have been talking about for many years now, it wasn't about championing a cause or getting behind something or some kind of a sob story. Put simply, it was the fights.
Yeah.
The fights themselves. The fights were entertaining, which is what matters the most.
That's what it was all about for me. The fights were good.
And I noticed that with the women boxers, unlike many of the men, the big fights, the ones you want to see, they don't really take that long to make. The fighters themselves, they're willing to fight, they're gonna fight.
And the fights deliver.
Where it may be difficult to sometimes get some of the guys in the ring with each other based on platforms and promotional issues or purse demands, with the women fighters, the ones that you want to see fight each other, you can usually make it happen in a timely fashion, faster than you could with two guys.
This Friday's fight is proof of that.
It may be that women's sports may not resonate as much as men's sports in the United States, but the women's basketball players are still going at it, and look at how they're developing. I see a similar thing happening in women's boxing. The fights are entertaining. They try very hard, and Estrada and Valle have made a terrific fight, drawing a lot of interest, while our social media department has really gotten behind it with some great vignettes. I'm very satisfied with how this fight has developed.
When people come and see a female athlete for only their amazing skill and effort, that is true women's sport, said Hogshead McCarr.
I don't necessarily agree with that. You have to let people be people.
What does that mean?
You can't force feed people things. You can't force people to watch a women's boxing match because it's the right thing to do. You can't do that, and that's not the angle to come at it from.
There is something there for everyone. Thus, you have to let people be who they are and let things be what they are, because a fight fan may gravitate towards a fighter for any number of reasons, and one of them might be the fighter's aesthetic, whether it's a man or a woman. I remember in Oscar's heyday, of course there were some people who followed his career out of the Olympics where he won the gold, and of course there were some people who were fans of him for his boxing, but there were a lot of women who were fans of him because of his aesthetic, because of his good looks.
He was like a rock star.
So you have to just kind of let things be what they are. Let the boxing and let the boxers be for the individual, whatever they are, whatever draws them in.
It's all good.
I've learned over time, you have to adapt in certain ways. I'm not saying I have a woman fighter who's as good as Saul Canelo Alvarez. What I'm saying is, I have a world champion boxer who you're gonna have a great time watching.
The fans will on Friday night. Both Yokasta Valle and Senicia Estrada have the propensity to throw punches in bunches. They are both action fighters that will put forth an action fight.
And fans love action fights.
Though what specifically draws every fan to a specific fighter or fighters depends upon the individual. And for some, it may be the fighter's aesthetic, the fighter's budding good looks in tandem with how they fight. It can be any number of things for any number of people. And that's why I say you gotta just let things be what they are and not virtue signal.
Don't chastise people, don't wag your finger in their face and tell them that you should this or you should that.
They're not gonna put up with that. Nobody is. The fights are good, and if you give them a platform to showcase that,
People will eventually come around.
we're already seeing that. I feel that Top Rank could do more in the North American market to scoop up some of the other fighters that are floating around that don't have a major promotional outfit behind them, but could use one, like Canada's Bree Howling.
He's a fan-friendly fighter, an action fighter.
They could stand to do a little bit more in the North American continent. For now, keep your eyes peeled for Estrada versus Valle in the co-main event to the main event this Friday, Valdez versus Wilson.
I don't care to see Canelo get beat up like that. It doesn't really.
I'm not saying he gets beat up, but
I think he gets hammered.
Okay, but regardless. So if David Benavidez wins the fight, that's my point. I think David's going to be the next star, as Canelo has to do what great Mexican legends do. They fight the next guy. They all do that. I want that. I think that's important for the legacy of the sport, for the legacy of the Mexican.
That's the problem. Why do we have to care more than Canelo, though?
But Canelo, you know what Canelo does care about? The green.
Well, yep.
The green, obviously. 150, 200 million, he cares.
In life,
there's
everything is about that now.
There's 200 million thoughts about caring for that fight now. So, okay, listen, we make that fight. However we make that fight happen, I think it's important for that fight to happen. I really do. I think David Benavidez has that star quality to be the next face of boxing. And beating Canelo, I think, really matters. Listen, Canelo got lost to Mayweather, still became the guy.
I don't think I'd give that vote of confidence to David myself. I don't, because a big part of the reason that a guy becomes the face of the sport, the face of boxing, is because he's the guy who consistently gives the fans the fights that they want.
Sooner or later.
That is what is consistent with every single fighter that ever became the face of boxing, whether it's Canelo in this era or Floyd in the previous one.
Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar fought everybody, win or lose.
Roy Jones Jr. fought everybody, win or lose. What is consistent is that the face of boxing is consistently meeting that demand, that grassroots demand from the fans. And I don't think that's David. With David, it's a lot more specific, a lot more simple. It's more like Canelo.
It's Canelo or nobody.
For obvious reasons. They want to make it seem like it's all about the money for Canelo and it's about something else for David. It's not about money for David. It's only about money for Canelo.
Bullshit.
Fucking bullshit. It's about money for the both of them.
You think it's not?
You think this guy that's standing in somewhere in between 6'2" and 6'3", walking around at around 200 pounds, is squeezing down to 168 for some reason other than the money?
Huh?
The money he could make from a Canelo fight.
What are you, naive?
Or, if nothing else, the money he could make attaching his name to the name of Canelo's, even in the absence of a fight.
Promotion by way of name association.
What some people like to call clout chasing. A guy this big, cutting that much weight. You think he's doing that for some other reason?
What are you, stupid?
Chris believes that, win or lose in a Canelo-Alvarez fight, hell, in the absence of one, that David may have the ingredients to become the next face of boxing, but I don't agree with him because he doesn't have the track record.
The consistency or the ability?
Don't give me the bit about legacy. He only cares about legacy when he could have unified this division a long time ago. He could have unified this division long before Canelo started on his undisputed run. He was already there, and he didn't unify shit.
It's a fact.
What's an opinion is that he's not actually as good as people let on, and what he's been doing at 168 is outsizing a lot of these guys.
It's not the worst thing in the world. A lot of people do it.
But it's the kind of thing that works up until it doesn't. I remember Paul Williams many years ago, a very tall, very long fighter for his weight, a volume puncher, just like David's a volume puncher.
I remember when Sergio Martinez knocked him the fuck out.
I remember Jarrett Hurd. I remember Jarrett Hurd being a big guy for his weight like David is a big guy for his weight. I remember Jarrett Hurd being a volume puncher like David is a volume puncher.
And I remember that Julian Williams kicked his ass.
Because that strategy to where you're going to boil down in weight so that you can be a particularly big fighter at a given weight, that's the kind of thing that works up until it doesn't.
And that's what David's been doing.
The same thing that Jarrett Hurd was doing. Jarrett was an unusually big junior middleweight. I used to look at the guy and think to myself, Jesus,
wow,
how the hell's he getting down to 154?
How has David been getting down to 168?
And Jarrett Hurd, like David Benavidez, he was no tactician. He was no technician. He wasn't the most fundamentally sound fighter. What he was a really big, strong guy for his weight.
Up until he wasn't.
Like all his durability and all his punch resistance evaporated almost overnight in that Julian Williams fight, where he used to be a solid fighter who could take a solid shot. All of that just mysteriously went away.
That could happen to David.
Being bigger than everybody else is no substitute for nuts and bolts boxing, boxing skills, boxing acumen, outsizing guys.
Does this have to do with Chris Algieri?
And what he said?
Yeah.
Chris Algieri said that he thinks David could go on to become the next face of boxing. And I'm saying I don't think he has the skills to do it.
That's what I'm saying.
These fighters who have gone on to become the face of the sport are skilled fighters, very skilled fighters. Canelo is a more skilled fighter than he's given credit for here today, as was Floyd Mayweather in his day, and Oscar De La Hoya, Roy Jones Jr.
Does take a certain level of ability to become that fighter, to become that.
And I don't think David has it.
No.
I think he's benefited from a noticeable size advantage at 168 that may not translate at 175.
That's what I think.
What are you gonna do? You gonna complain about it? You gonna get mad at me for saying it?
I don't care.
By now you already know what I think, but you keep coming here.
What are you waiting for me to change my mind?
I don't think he has the ability, the ceiling, the boxing fundamentals to become that fighter. No, I don't think he has it. I think he's gotten away with a lot of fundamental flaws, fundamental mistakes at 168 due to his size, because the guys that he fights can't make him pay for those mistakes.
That's what I think.
Benavidez Canelo is only the right thing to do because the titles are not stripped from Canelo. If Canelo gets stripped of the titles, I don't care about David Benavidez anymore, because to me it's not even a good fight. If the right thing will be done in the sanctioning body to strip Canelo Alvarez of the belts the way they should and are supposed to for not fighting David Benavidez, then David Benavidez could go win those titles. I don't care who Canelo fights, because then as a non-champion, he has the right to do whatever he wants. And the boxing structure, the sport, actually keeps moving. I only care about Benavidez and Canelo because Canelo has the titles, and David Benavidez deserves a title shot, and that's the way the sport is supposed to move. But otherwise, there's so many better fights that I'd rather see in boxing.
Well, so what do you guys make of David Benavidez saying he wouldn't be surprised if he fights Canelo in the fall of 2024, which is the fight that I think all of us agree we want to see?
Well, that's a huge reversal from what he's been saying.
I know. And I said that myself several times here on this channel to no avail. It falls on deaf ears.
Even when you post a screenshot.
Fans will have none of it. They just want someone to cry to that it wasn't Canelo Alvarez's last fight, that it wasn't his first fight of what was supposed to be a 3-fight deal with the PBC, or that it's not his next fight.
David is saying the door is still open. Didn't you guys see that?
Yet they're still complaining, likely because they're afraid. They're afraid of what might happen in David's next fight, the fight with Alexander Vajdik, that he might go up there and he might get exposed. He might get destroyed. If he does, there goes the Mexican monster.
You know, if he decides he's going to fight Benavidez, there's a negotiation that has to happen. And if he comes out and says, this is the most amazing fight, it has to happen in September, absolutely, I can't think of a bigger fight. What does David Benavidez look at that? He's looking at it, his business people are looking at it and saying, wow, I've got a lot of leverage. You know, if you look at his career, he doesn't run from people. He doesn't duck people. I wouldn't take this away and say he's never going to fight David Benavidez. I don't believe it. I still have faith that, you know, he is very much considering that.
So you have David Benavidez himself saying that the fight might happen in September. Don't be surprised if it does. And you have Samson Lukowicz singing a very similar tune, as well as Stefan Espinoza, who still has faith the fight might happen later on in the year.
These are your people, not mine.
These are the people that you take your cues from. These are the people that you listen to, except when it comes to that.
I don't go by what they say.
I connect the dots to call them out on their bullshit, to figure out when they're telling the truth and when they're lying, but I don't actually go by what they say.
I don't.
You do.
Stefan Espinoza said when you look at Canelo's track record, he doesn't duck people.
Him saying that doesn't mean a goddamn fucking thing to me, but it should mean something to you, because this is one of the guys that you listen to.
How do you reconcile it then?
All the Benavidez camp, all the Benavidez people are trying to convince the world that Canelo Alvarez is avoiding them, so that the very next minute, the people on his side can start talking about how the fight might happen. It might happen in September. What is that?
I'll tell you what it is.
Those who have don't feel time the same way that those who do not have feel time.
What?
Those who have don't feel time the same way that those who do not have feel time.
There's a sense of urgency in the Benavidez camp because he can't keep making 168 forever.
Canelo doesn't feel that sense of urgency because he can keep making 168. He can keep making it just fine, whereas David's on borrowed time.
He doesn't have much of it.
And those who have don't feel time the same way that those who do not have feel time.
Canelo's got money. He's got plenty of money. He's not strapped for cash. But David wants to start making money. Serious money.
And those who have don't feel time the same way that those who do not have feel time.
It's more simple than you think.
More common than you think, but overall uncommon to the average Joe.
Be in a position of power like that.
It's the uncommon part and the part that most people really can't relate to.
The common man.
So when I see Paulie Malignaggi belly aching on Pro Box TV, or when I read through the comments these people leave under my videos discussing this subject.
Petulant children.
Crybabies. Fearful of what may happen to David Benavidez if this fight doesn't happen. Because as I stated in a previous video, David's ability to hurt Canelo's legacy is only as good as his ability to create his own.
They don't know if he can.
They're scared shitless of what may happen to him at 175 pounds.
Terrified.
Haven't you noticed ever since that fight with Vojdik was tabbed, they've become even more vocal?
They're scared.
As if complaining to me is going to alter the circumstances. What were you expecting when he inked that 3-fight deal last year? That David would be the first fight?
Are you a moron?
Or that David would be the second fight?
Are you a moron?
Is that how things move? In a very general sense, is that how things move in the sport of boxing? Is that how Al Heyman makes fights? He makes the big ones first?
No.
It took him 4 years to make Benavidez versus Plant, but you're expecting this one to happen in a jiffy?
You're saying we gotta wait 4 years?
No, I'm saying you may have to wait until September. You may have to wait until later on this year. That's what I'm saying. That's what I've been saying.
Then why are they still complaining to you?
Because they're scared. They're scared that if things go sideways in the Vojdik fight at 175, that kills the Canelo Alvarez fight at 168.
They're scared.
And that anyone would spend this much time on a stranger's opinion that they don't even agree with.
That's fear too.
Because they've been paying attention and they know usually, I'm right.
No, I'm not always right. Not 100% of the time, but most of the time.
They know that. And it bothers them that my opinion does not align with theirs, even though there are several YouTube channels out there they can watch that are saying all the things that they want to hear. They still come here.
Yet they still come here.
It is unsettling for them. Too similar to what we saw not that long ago from the Spence fans, who were just as adamant then as the Benavidez fans are now.
Just as vocal.
Just to be wrong in the end. Loud and wrong.
That's why they keep coming here.
In the end, it's a story that only time can tell, but I'm patient. They're not.
They're children.
Their underdeveloped brains demand instant gratification the same way an infant does when he cries out for his bottle.
Call the wambulance.
Because my opinion has to align with yours?
Don't like it? Don't watch.
It's very simple.